Welcome to iNN's Headlines and Beyond for Monday, April 9th, 2012. We've been working on some new stuff for you. This is why today's broadcast is coming to a little bit later on. We've got some more sources, we've got some more options. But let's start off right away. We're going to start off particularly with the information that's coming out. There seems to be now a real shift in the rhetoric that's coming out from both the left and the right surrounding the goings on in the election. So I will bring to you. I will play this part of our new feature now. This is a video from Bill O'Reilly. We can take a look at it here.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Howard Dean on the attack. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Just call me Miss Cleo, psychic to the stars. Just minutes after I told you last night that the Democratic Party's strategy to re-elect President Obama will be to attack Mitt Romney and the Republican Party. Presto! A few minutes later, Howard Dean shows up on MSNBC and says this. The Republican Party is gay bashing, Muslim bashing, Latino bashing, immigrant bashing, women bashing every day. And so their young people are just not going to vote for Romney because they're not going to. They think insurance should actually pay for birth control. They don't. Their friends are gay, Muslim, Latino, and so forth and so on. They're sick of this stuff. Now, I want to thank Governor Dean for making me an oracle. It was nice of him to do it. So what we have here is the Democrats trying to put together a coalition of the aggrieved. Millions of Americans who feel they're not getting what they deserve. And of course, President Obama is here to help them. Now, that analysis is not a slap at the president. Unlike some of you, I don't think he's a bad guy. But I do think he's misguided philosophically, and because of that, is doing damage to the country's economic infrastructure. But I don't see him as Dr. Evil. In fact, I have never, ever seen Mr. Obama with a cat.
As you know, every diabolical scheme that I've hatched has been thwarted by Austin Powers.
Now seriously, here's how the campaign is going to unfold.
So that's that video there, and we can compare it to a couple other videos that he has. Here we'll go to the second one here. That was last week. This is this week.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura Ingram in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. The phony war on women, that is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Keeping with the theme of suffering on Good Friday, the White House hosted and boasted a Women in the Economy conference. Now this, of course, follows the relentless push by Democrats to gin up the contrived war on women election year narrative. The Obama campaign has made it clear that appealing to working women is a key part of the president's re-election strategy. The administration confab showcased familiar Obama boosters and election year feminists, including conservatives such as Obama pal Kathleen Parker. Now, this was a choreographed event for maximum political pandering, though the president tried his usual jujitsu.
Women are not some monolithic bloc. Women are not an interest group. You shouldn't be treated that way.
So why are you treating them that way, Mr. President? What happened to bringing people together rather than dividing them along gender, racial, and socioeconomic lines? And if you look at the facts, women are doing better than men. In her new book, The Richer Sex, Liza Mundy cites new research that shows in U.S. cities, single women in their 20s without children on average make more than men. And check this out, almost 40% of working wives out-earn their husbands. The next generation of women in America will make more than their male counterparts across all levels of employment. In 49 of the last 50 months, unemployment was lower for women than men, this according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and women receive roughly 3/5 of both bachelor's and master's degrees from American colleges and universities. And get this, it gets better. The national journal Heartland Monitor Group is reporting that 3/4 of women say they believe they can now advance as far as their talents will take them, regardless of their gender. And nearly as many report that they've not experienced discrimination at all in the workplace. Now, before his inauguration. And we do not need to waste the taxpayers' money on transparently political events designed to reinforce the bogus notion that Democrats care more about women and Republicans don't. And that's the memo. Now,
so you're not calling because it's been.
So this is sort of what's been the narrative that's been going on in the news across both ABC, NBC, a lot of these different evening shows that bring you news and analysis that are something like this, that just don't just simply report the headlines, but they go into they have these experts on, they have the panels on there. And I'll be bringing more of this as I get this more organized and working properly. As you see, there were still some technical glitches that I have to kind of work out. Once I get that sort of sorted out, I hope aiming for tomorrow night, we'll bring in some more of the video and more of so you can sort of see what I'm talking about, and we can start taking a look at a better comparison to and the three shows we're looking at is looking at Aaron Burnett, Anderson Cooper, and then on Fox, the O'Reilly Factor, and then on MSNBC we're going to look at Rachel Maddow, and you'll see the range in arguments, how one side presents the other side, and then we'll take a look at some of the problems that are facing both Republicans and the Democrats. Now, the Democrats' problem is one that is taking a model it's kind of easy to see where it's going to end up, because all you have to do is look at Europe, and the Obama and the Social Democrats have taken on this sort of social left economic model that we see in Europe. If we look at China and India and ask what their economic model is, their economic model is essentially a Republican economic model. This is what they chose to do. And so the question is, where do you want to end up? Do you want to end up like India and China, economically speaking, or do you want to end up like Europe? These are the two particular groups, the two particular choices. The question is, why aren't the Republicans bringing this up as an argument? And the reason that they're not doing this has to do with the Republican xenophobic stance, particularly in regards to immigration. And they're talking about sort of cutting back immigration and not allowing quote unquote foreigners to come in and take American jobs. Well, the problem is that foreigners really aren't coming in and taking our jobs. They're simply doing a better job at being competitive, being American, than Americans are. I mean, Americans used to be this hard-working group of people who were able to do more or less anything and worked, for the most part, they did their best at their job. Now we have people living for the weekend. We have people who can't wait to get out of work. They really don't enjoy. They don't want to be there to do a good job. They don't have any form of loyalty or it's not even ambition. It's basically the attitude towards work that an immigrant would have. An immigrant, if you watch and if you've been in any immigrant neighborhood, you'll know that an immigrant will more often than not outwork and outperform his North American counterpart more often than not. And this is the problem when you interview and you talk to employers, even particularly on the small business side, as to who they would rather hire. They would rather hire an immigrant or someone from North America, like an American, and their choice almost every time is that they're going to hire an immigrant. And the reason they give you is that I can't get a good American worker in here. The Americans simply don't know how to work. They don't want to work. And because of this sort of attitude and this again is no longer just a black or white issue anymore. This is anyone who has a sort of a Western value or Western ideals, where they've sort of taken up this intellectual stance that they have to have a certain job in order to be respected properly, and then even when they're on the job, they don't really want to be there. It's that they're always working for the weekend. They want to go out and party. Sometimes they're calling in drunk, or they're, they do as much as they possibly can to avoid the work rather than getting the work done. And this was shown that from some of the internet problems that the companies were showing that the number of people who were doing personal shopping online on eBay while at work was an epidemic problem all across these companies. That they hire all these people to do this work, and rather than doing the work, what are they doing? They're on the internet surfing, going shopping, or just sort of fooling around. There's not really a lot of work being done, and this becomes a problem when you're a company and you're trying to make money, and that money has to go back to shareholders, and your shareholders are your pension funds. So this affects anyone who, and this is where the irony comes in. If you're an American pension holder and you want to see your pension survive, so when you're old enough so that you can have something to retire on, then you want these companies to do well. And that means laying off American workers and hiring foreign workers. Why? Because if that company makes more money with a foreign worker, that means that more money is going into your pension fund because your pension fund holds these stocks. Then that's good for you, but in terms of your pension. But where it's bad for you is if you're an employee of that company, while your pension is going to do okay, because it's invested in these stocks, whether it's a 401k or an IRA, whatever it is, or a mutual fund, you're not going to do all right because you no longer have an income. So there's sort of a catch-22 here as to how you want to go about doing this. But this is it. The Republican problem is that they have an extremely xenophobic position right now. They really need to get rid of this. If they were able to get rid of the xenophobic position, they'd be able to use the examples of India and China as a good or positive direction for a Republican style economic policy. Where if they could have done this and they aren't doing this, pointing to Europe and saying, well, this is Obama's plan is Europe's economic plan, and we can see where that's going to end up. And that's ending up with Greece defaulting, with Spain in the same situation. And the question is, do you want to end up, does the United States want to end up in the same economic condition that Greece is in? And if the answer is no, then you've got to do what India and China has done. And that means following a Republican economic model. But again, this argument isn't being brought out. It's not being sort of laid out properly. And Obama says that his route is the best route, that he's going to stick there. And the argument and the rhetoric is that they're simply going to tax millionaires, and that they're going to promote women and so on and so forth, as we saw in that video there. But I know personally from people that I know in the United States that there are elderly women who are concerned now because Obama is not going after the millionaire, because once there should be an asterisk after it, because it depends on how the IRS defines a millionaire. It depends on who they go after. And they're going after people basically who are in the bracket range of $200,000 a year on up. And this is a number of people, and this isn't the net $2,000 a month. This is gross $2,000 a month. $2,000 a year. And I know a number of elderly people who are in their pension and they're sick. They've got cancers and so on and so forth, and they're being put upon by the Obama healthcare plan, by their healthcare plan, which includes their cancer treatments and the treatments for their various illnesses are now all of a sudden labeled Cadillac insurance policies, and they're being taxed. Not only are their insurance policies being taxed, but now they're in their retirement years, they're facing taxation under this new tax policy that's only supposed to affect millionaires. Yeah, this person is clearly not a millionaire. But the thing is, if you lump together the entire retirement fund that the person has, yeah, they're a millionaire because that's what their retirement fund is. But when you pass out all that over the number of years, what they're going to have to live on, then all of a sudden they're not millionaires. If you have $1 million in your pension fund, and you're now classified, and you will be classified in the United States as a millionaire, if you meet that out over 10 years, that's only $100,000 a year to live off of. Some people, depending on their economic stance that they're leaving the workforce in, they can't live off that. So they're going to have to sell their house. They're going to have to sell their cars. They're going to have to sell a large chunk of their properties, of what they accumulated and worked for the rest of their life, in order to pay this so-called millionaire's tax. And this isn't a theory. This is actually happening. These are people that I actually know that are happening, that are concerned for this. People who have worked all their life, who saved every dime, who worked very hard to save their money so that they could have a comfortable retirement, are now worried and concerned because now they are past this millionaire mark, and they're being told and being warned by the IRS that they're going to come after them for these particular for this so-called millionaire's tax. So this millionaire's tax is not going to hit just the average person who's making $200,000 a year on up. It's going to affect anybody with a pension plan that is $1 million and over for their retirement, and that means anybody who plans to retire, who has a good retirement account, they're going to get hit. So you can see a lot of pensioners, a lot of people who at least can afford it, getting hit by the taxes. Now they're going to get hit this year, and they're going to get hit worse next year when the health care plan really comes into full effect, and the real cost for the Obamacare plan is going to start hitting. And they're saying that, it's the Republicans waging war on women, on all these different groups. Well, look, who's doing this? Who's suffering here? Look at what's going on in Chicago. The number of the blacks unemployed in Chicago, and O'Reilly had a feature on what was going on, the black on black violence in Chicago, and it's enormous. There's a significant problem there, and it's not being addressed by anybody. And the thing is, while we can criticize Obama for creating a lot of the problem in Chicago with the black on black violence, by sort of locking, because when you take away tax cuts, these tax cuts and loopholes that are in the tax law can be used by anybody, and it's often how a lot of people, when they start off poor, they use these tax loopholes to climb the ladder of success. They're the rungs on the ladder of economic success. And by eliminating these loopholes, you're eliminating people who are lower down on the ladder from climbing up the economic ladder. So what happens is that Obama, in these laws that we've seen in Chicago, these sort of social left laws that are supposedly humanitarian, have locked people in the ghetto. I mean, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and take a look by state by state, and area by area, which states are Republican, which states are Democrat. And then as I present them to you, you tell me which areas you would rather live in. Because I know for a fact that a lot of the upscale neighborhoods are more often than not Republican in terms of their behavior, in terms of the way their laws are, and that the more Democrat areas are more of the urban areas, who are the poor, and the often this is where you see the ghettos are. And the question is, where do you want to live? Do you want to live in a more liberal Democrat neighborhood, which is more urban and has a higher crime rate, or do you want to live in something that's more suburban, that's more Republican, and has a higher economic standing. And the thing is it's no accident that the suburban and rural areas are more conservative, where you're doing better, and there's no accident that the urban areas, which are primarily Democrat, are doing worse, because this is the same dynamic between the economic difference between China and what's going on in Europe can be seen in the same difference between the Democrat urban areas, which are significantly poorer, and the wealthier suburban and rural areas. And so this dynamic, again, should be out there with the Republicans. It should be being mentioned, but it's not. It's not being mentioned at all by the Republicans. I don't know why it's not being mentioned, why it's not being pushed forward, but it's not. And the thing is that this is where you have people like Olympia Snowe, where she from Maine, saying, "Oh, I can't handle this anymore. I'm going to retire because the bipartisanship in the Senate is so bad. I can't get anything done." Well, the thing is that that's not necessarily true, because if you were a Republican American, and this is a proper American, and you believed in the ideal of individuality, that an individual can get up and do anything they want, there's no reason why a senator has to do things through the government, particularly if you're a Republican. You can go down the private route and get things done on your own, and then turn back to the government and say, "Hey, look, this was done privately. We don't need to fund this anymore through the government, because this is being done and has been done privately." But unless we have this sort of stepping up of Republicans and business people in the Republican community to show that all the social programs that the Democrats want done can be done privately, and done at better privately, then the social Democrats are always going to have the arguments, "Oh, these poor people need to be taken care of, and in the process, we need to tax you so that we can take care of these poor people," even though this is not the reality. Under the social left tax program, this tax and spend program, it's the people on the bottom, is the poor people who get hurt the worst. Because what happens is, as they attack the rich, as they attack the people who own the business, your corporations, they in turn pass that cost on to the consumer. So this is where, when you're looking at inflation, you're asking yourself why prices are going up the way they go up. A large chunk of the cost of a price, a large chunk of the inflation, one is your the labor cost, and then two, taxes. These are the two main factors: are taxes and labor costs. You want to reduce your inflation, you need to reduce your taxes, and you need to reduce your unit labor costs. Don't do that, then the costs are still going to go up, up, and up, and up. And because they go up times profit, the average consumer, particularly down at the bottom, will never catch up. You will never have the average worker being able to keep up with inflation, because the average worker's salary is included in the price of inflation. As the worker's salary goes up, the price of whatever he's paying for in terms of what he wants to bring home goes up times profit. So he's part of the inflation equation. He cannot remove himself from this inflation equation. And the only option he has is to open up and start learning about the open economic system, the free market economic system, because that's how he's going to raise himself out of where he is. But that's it. Again, these options aren't being presented by any of the Republicans to the lower economically placed or the lower economically ranked people. They're sort of being left to their own. They're being left to fail. And unfortunately, as this happens, the Democrats do have a good sales strategy, where they're able to go out and sell people, "Oh, poverty isn't your fault. It's somebody else's fault. You need to blame these other people over here, and we are going to here to help you with your poverty." But the thing is that because the government always needs these impoverished people, particularly the social left needs these impoverished people. There is no incentive to resolve the problem, because as soon as the problem is resolved, then these government people aren't needed anymore. So you want to keep yourself employed in your government agency, then you spend as much money as you possibly can, and then every year, oh, the problem somehow is getting worse. We need more money. And that's how you keep yourself employed as a government employee. And this is what happens across, this is what was happening in Greece, this is what's happening across Europe, and as more and more enterprises, private enterprises in Europe, becomes government controlled, becomes government owned, more and more this value of we need to spend every dime so that we can ask for more money later on, passes on through company after company after company, because they realize that all they have to do is go back to the government and say, we need more money in order to pay for everything. But the problem is, there's a point in time where so much money is borrowed, so much money is consumed and owed, that it's impossible for the taxpayer to ever pay it back. And this is the situation that we're in now. We're in this situation where we have gone beyond the point where the taxpayer can actually pay back any amount of the tax that is, any amount of the debt is owed, is being forced on it. And what's happening now is the United States and a lot of Europe, the Europeans, are being turned into tax slaves. They're going to have to work off this debt, and the government's going to enforce that people work off this debt. And I think it's not just affecting this whole thing that Obama says, oh, it's just affecting millionaires. This is a lie. This is an out-and-out lie, and I've seen it personally, and I can say with a very certain degree, because I've seen it personally, that Obama is lying about what's going to happen with the economy, and what's already occurring with the economy. So what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll look at more of what's going on in the news. For the second half, we'll go into foreign affairs and talk about the situation in Syria. See you in a second. I'd like to welcome back to iNN's headline news and beyond. This is the second half for Monday, April 9th, 2012. We left off talking about domestic affairs in the United States in terms of the Republican primary, and that it really does seem to be more or less over. Although in the media's perspective, the media has now pushed forward, and this is also the assumption of the Democrats in terms of how they're handling their strategy. They're wasting no time going after Romney in terms of what his positions are on the issues, and most of the media seems to be following suit. So a lot of the attention that were on the primaries before are now over and done with. They're now moving on to other things, and as Bill O'Reilly says, they're now getting into the mudslinging, and the predictions is that this election is going to be one of the nastiest elections in recent memory. That this is going to get really, really nasty, really, really ugly. And I'll show you more as I get more information. My domestic affairs new information wasn't as put together as I hoped. There were some technical mistakes with the videos. I want to bring more of it out. So I'll work on that for tomorrow night. I'll also be working on videos and documentaries that will back up what I'm talking about in here, so you'll be able to get a better feel for things. I will be uploading this week, probably either tonight or tomorrow night, the 5th part of Daniel Yergin's The Prize. This is something you need to watch, because a lot of what's going on in the world today is really connected to this documentary, or sort of the information that's in the documentary. A lot of the way we see things, particularly in foreign affairs, has so much history behind it that it's almost impossible to separate things from their appropriate content. This is what I was talking about in the last broadcast, that we have a context in which things sit in. The most fundamental context, the largest context that things sit in, is theology. From theology, we get the moral context. From the moral context, we get our constitutional, and then our legal context sits within the constitutional context. It's within these contexts here that society at large forms around these ideals, and this is where your media is, and on a variety of different sides, and But a lot of times we forget the context that things sit in, particularly as we peel back the layers to the more fundamental. We start basically our immediate view is legal, then it's constitutional, then it's moral, and then theological. The problem is that because we are the way we are, we view things in the more immediate terms. And this is where we view things as religion. Religion is the practice of whatever a belief is. It's how you practice your religion, or and the religion can be. It's how you practice your theology. Because religion is the practice of theology. It's not the theology itself. In this case, religion can be anything, any theology, including a theology that has at its core the idea that there is no God. And what we can do is we can show that in even foreign affairs, in we'll call it the geopolitical sphere of goings on that we see in the news, particularly about Syria, Iran, so on and so forth, that we can actually go back into the different theologies to see how things actually play out. And we can see that a lot of different groups, not just one group, but a lot of different groups have different levels of influence in the environment, and it's not one whole monolithic conspiracy theory. And this is something also that I'm going to be working on to bring in, is a look at this whole concept of conspiracy theory, the Bilderbergs, the Illuminati, all these different things that are out there that people think, oh, there is one overall riding factor that controls everything. That this is sort of a monolithic type of movement, and we're all heading in one particular direction because of this one monolithic because of this one monolithic control. The problem is this whole concept of a monolithic control is false, and it can be demonstrated to be false. It can be even shown that the whole thing about the Illuminati and the Bilderbergs, if we look into history, we can see this is actually false, even though it has a huge history behind it. We can see that there are a variety of different groups, and these groups make and break alliances as they need to. So it can appear as if one group is one massive group, when it's not really one massive group. They're simply working on one thing together, and they're working separately on other things. And this sort of back and forth and making and breaking of alliances can be done in a way that it appears to the public and is presented to the public as one thing, but it's really something different. And this is called false flags. This is called propaganda. This is called PR. And it has infected media in such a way today that it is very difficult to determine whether or not a person who is reporting the story is actually a reporter or is an intelligence agent. And this is the same thing that can be said for human rights, these human rights groups. The human rights groups have now been infiltrated by the CIA, by Mossad, by various intelligence agencies, and are being used as assets in covert military wars. And this is certainly true in Afghanistan. This is true in Iraq. This is true, and it has been true for all of the American involvement in the Middle East. That you've had a huge amount of CIA, Mossad, working on both sides of the aisle. And so when we hear that we have the U.S. and the United Kingdom pushing for destabilization in Syria, This shouldn't come as a surprise to you that they're promoting this as a humanitarian exercise when it's not. What could be the possible motivation? Well, if you're looking at what's going on, particularly in Iran and Israel's position with Iran, you'll know that Israel is strongly connected with the United Kingdom and the U.S. Next, you need to know that if you were watching Daniel Yergin's The Prize, you'll know one of the major oil companies for Britain is known as Anglo-Persian. Well, Anglo-Persian is if you don't know the company, is actually the company BP. BP is Anglo-Persian. Persia and Persian, the Persian part of Anglo-Persian, is Iran. When the Iranian oil field, when Iran went through the coup, and we had the Shah of Iran overthrown by the Ayatollah, who ironically came from France. He wasn't in Iran at the time. He was in France. He was transported from France to Iran for the revolution. And the thing is that the opposing sides of this in the oil argument is that in France you have Royal Dutch Shell, right? You have the European oil companies, predominantly Royal Dutch Shell. The English company is Anglo-Persian or BP. So these are two competing interests in the region. What are the competing interests here? In Iran, the Shah was set up by the United States in the United Kingdom as the dictator who would control Iran, just the way we have the royal family in Saudi Arabia. Again, this is a U.S. and UK arrangement in Saudi Arabia that keeps the Saudi family in power. So there shouldn't be any mistake as to why the Saudis get a pass on 9/11, and that's very simple because the Saudis get a pass because the Saudis are set up and run by the British and the United States. They're integrally related. So there's the reason why is it has to do with the military relationship and the intelligence relationship between the United States, the United Kingdom, and Saudi Arabia. And of course, there's an oil play in there as well as the key factor. So when you have Iran being overthrown, the Shah of Iran being overthrown by the Ayatollah Khomeini, well, all of a sudden now you have a move that was, instead of being something that was favorable to the United States and the United Kingdom, you now have something that was sort of opposed to the United States and in England, and more importantly, opposed to Israel. And this is one of the key factors there, is that you have an Israeli interest in there as well, in terms of what's going on in the Middle East. Israel, for the longest time now, during the presidency of Ronald Reagan, if those of you who remember the Iran-Iraq War, where you had, in a very visible manner, you had the United States, Israel, and everybody else backing and funneling weapons to Iraq. Then it came later out under the Iran-Contra scandal that the United States and Israel was also funneling weapons to Iran. And why would the United States and Israel, if they were supporting Iraq and supporting even the use of chemical weapons by Iraq inside of Iran, why would they be supplying Iran with weapons? And the very simple answer is this, and it's a Machiavellian question. This is where you have to go back and read some things like George Orwell or Machiavelli, is because a lot of their stories contain a lot of the goings on in politics. And the politics is that if you want to take control of something, the easiest way to conquer somebody is to divide and conquer. And what has Israel been doing in the Middle East? It's been doing the exact same thing. If they can keep the Arabs and the people in the Middle East fighting, then this clears the route for Israel and a lot of their other, and this includes the American interests, the United Kingdom, the European interests, to walk in and take over, because they're so busy fighting each other, they don't have the ability or the stamina anymore to fight off an invasion from the outside. So a lot of what's going on in Syria now is you're having both sides of the equation being armed and supplied so that they can fight each other enough so that Israel, the United States, and the United Kingdom can walk in, wipe out the Air Force, and clear a path to Iran through Syria. And this is where they're aiming. This whole diplomacy that's going on between Iran and the world, they know this is gonna fail because it was set up by the UN, by the US, by the UK. It was designed to fail. It's designed to fail. And so what they're doing now is what's going on in Syria is the preparation for war in Iran. And this is where you have on the U.S. you have basically they're talking about going in and bombing the sides in order to create this air corridor. And we not only have the United States saying this, but now the confirmation is coming out even further as to actually what's going on. We have confirmation from even people like Senator John McCain coming out and saying that they're in there trying to get rid of Assad. That this is a ploy. They're using the air excuse.
You're not calling, because it's been portrayed that you were calling for basically U.S. Planes just flying bombing runs. You're not calling for that. You're calling for other nations in the air as well.
Absolutely, and it's unfortunate because I said foreign air power. In Libya, they were able to do it with British and French and others, and UAE aircraft and others. We have the capacity, in my view, to stop Assad and this slaughter. Now it's reached the point where you have artillery and tanks against AK-47s. It's going to require foreign air power. And again, the United States not going alone, but the United States leading.
I think Bashar al-Assad has bought time. He knows what he's doing. His intention is the same as it's always been, and that's to destroy the opposition. He intends to wipe them out. He's not going to negotiate. He doesn't care what the UN wants. Yes, the UN's been played.
And Marie, is there any reason for anyone in the world, the UN, the Arab League, Kofi Annan, whoever, to believe what Bashar al-Assad says about doing a ceasefire?
I understand. I agree with Bob. I don't think he's going to stop. I don't think there's any reason any of us should expect him to stop tomorrow. He has broken one promise after another, and he will say whatever it takes to give him more chance to keep killing.
Bob, you say Kofi Annan can be in Damascus every other day and it won't make any difference.
None at all. This regime, we have to go back and look what they're fighting for. They're fighting for their survival. I talked to someone in the regime not long ago, and he said they figure about 30% of the people support Bashar al-Assad, not because of him, but they're afraid of what the opposition is going to do. And he told me they will hold on until the bitter end, until one side is completely won.
And Anne-Marie, is there still a time for resolving this diplomatically?
Well, I think actually the U.S. government and other allies have been right to give it every possible chance for a diplomatic resolution, but I do think that time is at an end. I think Kofi Annan did what he could do. He got people on board, but it's going to be clear that that's not going to solve things, and at this point, either we're going to have to say we more or less accept the situation we have now where Assad is going to just keep killing, or we not only keep tightening economic sanctions, other sanctions, but we start moving toward a real possibility of military action.
And Bob, what would that look like, military action? We're not talking about U.S. boots on the ground, certainly. John McCain has talked about international airstrikes. There's also, I guess, arming opposition. What do you see as options?
Well, I think, first of all, it's key what Anne-Marie was saying is, look, we're moving to a worse situation as we speak. Unless there's some sort of a miracle that occurs tonight or tomorrow, we're going to see this violence spread. We're going to see it spread more into Lebanon. There was a killing there today in Lebanon. There's been killings in Turkey, shooting across the border. And once this thing starts to spread beyond Syria's borders, I think it's fairly inevitable we're going to have to use air assets to destroy his armor and take his air assets out of.
All right, so there you go. There's the the old adage that we have to use military weapons, and what you want to do is you want to spot the contradiction in there. You saw the McCain video, which was recorded earlier. It's from an earlier broadcast, and he was saying that they've already been supplying weapons and all other means of support to the rebels. And yet here's this lady here on the other just yesterday actually on Monday, saying the United States is giving diplomacy every chance it possibly can. Really? How can you be supplying weapons to the rebels and encouraging them to go in and continue fighting with Bashar al-Assad's men, the army, creating a war on the ground, essentially, and then saying, oh, we're giving humanitarian aid a chance. And then they're not doing that. They're not, but both of them talk about airstrikes. Remember, I was saying that they're going to go in and take out Assad's air force because they need the path to fly to in order to attack Iran? Well, this is it. Here's the unfolding of it. They're saying this exactly what's going on here. And the thing is, here's where I say this is now, from Bibi and AIPAC, this is from his perspective, sort of a PR promotion. This is being pushed by a political group supporting Israel, but this AIPAC group does not represent Israel. It does not represent the average Israeli person, because I went in and I checked. I actually went in and I checked with the Syrian TV. And here's what I found about the Syrian TV. There are channels, particularly that are being told that Syrian TV, the opposition channels, have been all but shut off. They've been turfed off the air. No one is getting any of the information that's going out in the Middle East about with the Arab groups, about what's going on in Syria. And this is apparently false. I went and checked. I can get live footage from Syrian TV. These are Islamic channels. They're not being broadcast here in the United States because they've been blocked and banned by the United States. Protect IP and SOPA, this sort of the IP blacklist, is already in effect. Well, a lot of people don't understand that this blacklisting and this blockage, the censorship of the internet, is not occurring just in Syria. Matter of fact, it's occurring less in Syria than it is occurring here. We have, in the United States on its internet has more censorship of what's going on in the Middle East than Bashar al-Assad does inside of Syria. So this has to give you some pause for thought here. And I'll give you a couple of just sort of, we'll go around and see. We're saying, oh, these rebels, these freedom fighters, who are they? What are they about? Well, if you go and look at I do have access to the Middle East sites through various different internet portals and different sort of internet means. There are ways of moving around these IP blocks and blacklists. It doesn't mean that they actually get stopped from being put out. There is no such thing as an IP blacklist or anything like that. There are always ways around these things on the internet. That's the way that the internet works. The internet has thousands of paths in order that you can sort of go around and work with. It's just the main and more obvious paths get blocked through the IP blacklist. And if you have the means and know-how, you can always work around these blocks and blacklists, and I've done that. and so I can sort of see what's going on in on the ground there. I've got a good feel. This is where I was working out today, and this is why I was a little bit late. Is I do have this going on, and I know that the journalist who was shot was working for a banned Islamic channel. This channel that this reporter was working for is banned in the United States because it's a jihadist channel. I've seen I don't know, there must be 30 different jihadist channels showing what's going on in Syria. And the jihadists are in there fighting. And it's up on their websites that they're fighting. And when you go around to the different parts of the world where the jihadists are, what do we see? In Yemen, right? Headlines for today, right? For April 9th, right? 60 people killed when the jihadists attacked a military base inside of Yemen. Yemen was supposed to be fixed because we had a regime change there. Remember the Arab Spring, right? Supposed to bring in regime change and fix things up. Well, today, 60 dead after an attack on the military base by jihadists. Inside Somalia, 12 people were killed when a bomb explodes in a market. The main suspects, the main people behind us, the jihadists, right? Nigeria, in front of a church, bomb blows up, kills 38 people. In Afghanistan, suicide bombing again, aimed at other Muslims, 9 people killed. And here I found, as I'm digging through the background, digging through the reports, what do I find on one of the back pages? In Libya. This is a report on Libya. A 2004 terrorist suspect in the United Kingdom was let go, sent back to his hometown, Libya. Where is he now? This bombing terrorist suspect. He's now head of Tripoli's military council in Libya. He's heading up the military council. We're also seeing in Egypt a move directly towards the Muslim Brotherhood, directly towards an Islamic State. We saw this in Libya. We saw this in we're seeing this in Yemen. We saw this in Egypt. There's increasing radicalization. It wasn't supposed to be. Everything was advertised as the Arab Spring as a democratic movement. It's not a democratic movement. And I reported this before. The Arab Spring is an Islamic Spring. It was initiated by Israel in Pakistan to bring Israeli-style democracy. That was sort of the hope, the ideal that was sort of presented. To bring it was being sold as is Israeli-style democracy in the Middle East, in these Islamic countries. That never happened. And what do we get? What do we see from Israel on the ground? What do we see from what's being talked about in the Israeli media? Here's some ideas here. Here's some of the comments, right, from an Israeli report. Israeli officials say that it means unclear how far Washington will go to help bring down about Assad's fall. They say Syria might become a failed state if unrest continues, with Hezbollah and Iran on one side and Al-Qaeda Sunnis on the other, consolidating footholds. In other words, here's what they're saying in the Israeli paper. The United States is knowingly supporting and supplying with weapons these rebel groups who are Al-Qaeda. So you have Syria and Hezbollah on one side, and you have Al-Qaeda, who are the Free Syrian Army, and the rebels on the other side. And this is who McCain is talking about funding and financing. So we go further on. What do we see further on, right? As we go down, you start reading through the comments, right? We will never be able to. We will never be able to bring back the Iran-Iraq war, but this is the next best thing. In other words, in order to keep the Islamists and people off Israel's back, Israel needs another Iran-Iraq war. It needs to be drawn out, protracted. It needs this unrest. It needs this war in order to degrade. And this is the personal side on. We always see, the other one was an official report. This is the comments below from the average Israeli. We're seeing this here. We go down to the next one. It says both sides are clearly at fault. here, as they fail to place the nation's interests above the prime. The government is too selfish, and the opposition is possibly riddled with outside government and non-governmental involvement. In other words, they're acknowledging the intelligence agencies that are involved in it from outside of Syria. They're involved. This is sort of being admitted. This is a horrible conflict that will only resolve if the government and opposition representatives engage in direct negotiation and cough up a compromise. In other words, both sides have to disengage. And this is what the UN report was supposed to do. It's supposed to say that both sides had to disengage. But both sides couldn't disengage because we heard that from the United States and the United Kingdom that they were increasing their aid and supply to the opposition. How do you step down from a conflict if you're increasing your supply and support? Right? It says, I don't see this happening, unfortunately. Both sides are adamant in their positions. The only beneficiary in this conflict is undoubtedly Israel. Again, talking about conquering and dividing, dividing and conquering, keeping the Arabs fighting enough so that they're off the Israeli back. And this is what the whole purpose of the Iran-Iraq war was. Israel's involvement in there was to push this war into effect in order to destabilize Iran-Iraq enough so they couldn't pay its attention to Israel. This same thing was being articulated here. Now, amazing how Israel and the United States have mastered the art of manipulating and warping events and words. Those same terrorists carrying out orders of Saudi Arabia under the supreme command of the United States are the same terrorists the Americans are supposedly hunting in Iraq and Afghanistan. Right? What a charade. They're pointing this out. They're pointing out the hypocrisy that the United States, on one hand, is arming and training jihadists like Al-Qaeda, well, at the same time in Afghanistan and Iraq, they're hunting them down. They're fighting. In other words, they're arming the enemy they want to kill. But this again, none of this ever comes up in the American media. All this is now. You have to go outside the United States, and we're now in Israeli media for this, right? And as we continue on down, there are two more now, right? It says U.S. kills them in Yemen, hails them in Libya, arms them in Syria, and most likely trains them at Langley. This again, from the Israeli paper, is aimed at the United States. Is a criticism aimed at the United States for being on both sides of the argument, and this is also true aimed at also Israel as a backdoor way here, right? And then the last one, Al-Qaeda my ass. Whatever really happens in Syria will be U.S. and Israel false flag operation disguised as Al-Qaeda. So there is the conflict in Syria and Iran in a nutshell. We are going to war in Iran. The war in Iran has already begun in Syria. We're seeing this, and this is what's going on. You're being lied to in the mainstream media. And I'll leave you with this for now. Take it easy. Have a good night.
Free speech rules here at Democratic Earth.